It's no secret that college campuses across the West are echo chambers of leftist ideology, often extreme left ideology that is intolerant of other views. They boast about diversity, equity, and inclusion, but they are openly hostile to those who hold mainstream conservative values. But one student at an elite American university has fought back against the anti-white hatred and groupthink he has witnessed firsthand on campus, and he has been surprisingly successful. That student is Daniel Schmidt from the University of Chicago, and he joins me now. Daniel, is it true you were almost expelled for exposing a professor's anti-white course?
Yeah, that's true. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Yeah, no, that's 100% true. Let me sort of paint the picture. So I get to this elite university, the University of Chicago, and I see this class, and it's called the Problem of Whiteness. And, I don't know if you're like me, but when I first heard that class, I was like, what the heck is that suggesting that there's a problem with white people or whiteness and there's a solution? I mean, what's going on here? This is insane. This is clearly racist. It's clearly anti-white. So I saw this class and I called it out on my Twitter. I said it's the most egregious example of anti-white hatred I've ever seen. And shortly afterward, the professor who was teaching this class, she filed 2 separate complaints to get me expelled. She said I led a harassment campaign against her, that I was inciting violence. And yeah, she filed 2 separate complaints. Now, fortunately, my school refused to expel me. But then she went to the New York Times. The New York Times wrote this massive hit piece on me, calling me a cyberbully, saying I instigated this campaign. And then to top it off, CNN wrote an article calling me a bully. So yeah, that's sort of what you get in America. And I'm sure around the world, if you're a white student and you call this stuff out. So yeah.
Oh, well, thank God you've got the strength to put up with this, because I think that would scare off most people to have these media giants going after you. Prominent people go to water with that sort of attention. So for you to take a stand, I'm very impressed indeed. And this started early with you. Within weeks of you starting at this university, you learned that you weren't allowed to participate in a debate tournament because you're white. Tell me what you did about that.
Yeah, well, it was absolutely insane because let me just paint a bit of a picture. I come from a middle class household in Tennessee, so a pretty rural area. I get to this university. Within weeks, I have these people running this debate tournament at my school tell me, yeah, this tournament's actually not open to white people. It's only open to non-white people. And, I've heard this stuff happen at universities. I always thought it was a bit exaggerated. It was a bit, to hype up media, but I experienced it in real time. And so I wrote an article about it. I had access to a newspaper at my school, and I straight up just exposed it. I tried my best. And then fortunately, a few national outlets picked it up. And then the year later, so this year, the debate did not happen. And I don't know for certain if it was because of what I did, but I have to imagine they got some attention, they got some traction. So what I'm really trying to emphasize on all these interviews I do, so here and on Twitter, is if you're a student at a university, you have a lot more power than you think. I know it seems daunting, like, oh, I'm against the mob and I'm one voice. But you really do have a lot more power because these people are fragile. The administrations are fragile. And if you call it out, if you bring attention to it, you will be actually surprised how much you can achieve. So if there are any students listening in, I would really encourage you to, if you ever see something that you just know inside is not right, seriously consider speaking up, because I think you would be surprised how much change you could actually cause.
Well, it's fantastic advice, but we do know kids at university and even faculty self-censor. How big a problem is that? How many kids come up to you, how many of your fellow students, and say, look, I back you, but I'm just not brave enough, or I'm too scared to say what I actually think?
Oh, it happens all the time. I mean, I think almost every single day, or maybe at least every single week, I get messages from students who sometimes I have no idea. They seem to be the least suspecting people. And they message me and they say, dude, I agree with you on everything. Thank you for doing that. And, listen, we're in a culture war. We are in a battle. We have to do sacrifices. And I think some people get the calling. Some people feel the need to speak up. Others feel the need to be quiet and maybe do more behind the scenes stuff. So, I totally recognize that. But I think, I do think there are people out there like me who feel within them they need to speak up. They have God's gift or they have some calling. And if you have that calling, seriously, I would say speak up. But yeah, self-censorship is certainly a problem. I've even had professors tell me on like the last day of class, hey, by the way, I secretly love what you're doing. So it's certainly there. And if anything, that just shows more and more people are waking up to this agenda.
Yep, and it's not just race, gender, sexuality that these universities have become obsessed with, but also the COVID vaccination status of their students. You challenged your university's ban on unvaccinated students accessing dining halls. Tell me what happened there, because I understand you had more success.
Yeah, well, I'm unvaccinated. It was a personal decision of mine. I was fortunate to receive a religious exemption. It took a lot of effort. It took me about 5 weeks to secure it, but fortunately I secured a religious exemption because my school made every student get the vaccine. And within the first few months of the year, my school said all unvaccinated students have to be banned from the dining hall. They cannot eat physically in the dining halls. And I was like, wait a second, that's actually illegal, because I go to school in the city of Chicago, and the city of Chicago said if you have an exemption, you're allowed to eat in public facilities. So not only is this rule clearly just wrong and immoral, it was flat out illegal. So again, I brought awareness to it and I pushed my administration tirelessly. I emailed the president, the dean, these other people. I mean, it was a whole chain of command. And again, after several days of just nonstop pressure, they stopped. And I just can't keep trying to emphasize this, like we see of the boycotts for like Bud Light and Target. Pressure works. You keep pressuring these people, you keep shining a light on the stuff, they will stop. And so after a few days, the administration quietly reversed the policy. And, I don't think there are many kids on my school who are unvaccinated. I'm probably like one of the only ones, but it's the principle that matters. It's the fact that my administration thought they could get away with this policy. They thought they could just have this policy and no students would oppose it. No students would think anything of it. Well, that's not right. I mean, you're going to treat people like me like second-class citizens because of a medical decision. That's just not right. And so again, spoke up, pushed my administration, and fortunately, the pressure worked. So again, yeah, pressure does work.
Yes, and like you said, it's not only immoral, but it's anti-science. We know with the vaccine, whether you choose to have it or not, it doesn't stop transmission. So to prevent students from accessing the dining hall, it just seems to be a callous decision based really on nothing other than cruelty. Just finally, I want to ask you what you think the biggest problem is at universities, higher education. Is it the students who are leading this woke agenda? Is it the academics? Is it the bureaucracy? Combination of all? What really is causing this current situation of groupthink and hostility on campuses to anybody who doesn't toe the leftist line?
Yeah, that's a very important question. I would say it ultimately goes down to affirmative action. I think affirmative action has sort of, spread like a cancer to every aspect of higher education, to the students, to the faculty. I mean, for example, at practically every major university in America now, the faculty members all have to sign diversity pledges, basically saying, I'm going to agree to these diversity commitments. I'm going to agree to this anti-racist language. I'm going to ensure I don't trigger anybody. I mean, that is wrong on so many levels. Number one, people who just are totally not on board with that, they're just not going to enter academia. And so what we see is academia now is totally an echo chamber where only people who agree with that are going to be in academia. Or number two, let's say someone doesn't agree with that, but really just wants to be in academia. Well, they still have to agree with it. And I think the more they agree with the stuff, the more they just go in line with it, the more they're going to slowly start believing in it and accepting it. It kind of kills their soul slowly but surely. So I really think it's this diversity, it's this affirmative action stuff. And on the student level too, I mean, just straight up, affirmative action admits kids who just simply are not qualified. And when you have less and less qualified students at top schools, you're going to just have more incompetence, more groupthink. It's ironic, affirmative action is all about diversity, but all it really does produce is less diversity of thought. You have more people who just agree the same way, and it really just is a recipe for disaster. So I would really say affirmative action is the root cause of a lot of bad stuff, and that sort of permeates all levels of higher education.
Well, you've shown the power of one. You've shown how much you can change just by standing up for what's right and having the courage to follow through with that. Daniel Schmidt, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.